Hello and welcome to episode number 99 of the NerdProQuo podcast. This is going up after the live show that happened on June 24th. We had the live 100th episode celebration. Thank you to all of the people who came out, and for those of you who listened to this or couldn't make it, and or for one reason or another couldn't be there, you missed a really fun show that will be going up in the next couple of weeks. Special thank you, especially going out to Eliel Lucero, Aaron Camino Smith, Luke Thayer, Sean Mallory, Rico Frederick, Grace Columbi, who all performed on the show and made it such a fun time. So thank you so much to those people who came out and performed, and also a special thank you to this episode's guest, Mr. Jared Singer. Finally got him on the podcast, and he is going to be the podcast right before we have the double, probably triple episode that is going to be the 100th episode, the hostful that I recorded with Angelo and Justin that is going up next week. And then the following week, the live show is also going up. I think I'm also probably going to provide just the performances part of the show. There's going to be a lot of editing that has to go on for that show. So when that episode finally does go up, you're going to notice a lot of edits. There's a couple edits in this episode as well. Some stuff that we needed to take out for various reasons. What do we got? Plugs. As always, the Living Room Comedy Show that is every Friday at 8 p.m. at the Postcard Cafe. That is 6th Street between 4th and 5th Avenue in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Union Square Slam, I believe, is still going on over the summer. That is every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. $5 cover. That's all ages. And I'm probably going to get the address, but I believe it's 210 West 13th Street. Or it's 308. I'm messing all of this up, but you can look that up if you need to, and if you've been listening to this podcast, you know what that is. But that is there's some more stuff. We're gonna be doing, even though this is a little late, a bunch of us did get around to watching Voltron Legendary Defender. If you haven't been watching that show, you should watch that. So there's probably gonna be a review with Eve and Eliel a couple weeks. Probably check in with another Preacher episode. If not next week, keep your eye on the website, which is probably going to be down for this episode. The episode will still be available. It just won't be available on NerdProQuo.com. But if you subscribe to it, it will. If you're already a subscriber, it should pop up. Look up NerdProQuo or Jamie's a Nerd, but look up the NerdProQuo podcast on iTunes, and you should be able to hit subscribe still. If not, this episode will be up on nerdproquo.com/podcast by the end of this week. It just won't be going up today, which is Sunday. But with no further ado, since it took a very long time to actually get him on, enjoy this episode number 99 of the NerdProQuo podcast with Jared Singer. And there we go. Tell people who you are, because I have name-checked you several times on this podcast.
I'm Jared Singer. I don't know what else you wanted me to say. I don't know what portion of the who I am is relevant here.
There's a lot. I don't even know where this, honestly, because we've had so many conversations off mic about nerdy stuff and poetry and all that. I honestly, let's start with how you would define yourself or what you do for a living, because let's start there and we'll go from there.
Even that's not a terribly easy question. I'm a small business owner. I own my own small business doing live sound for live theater and music festivals. That is my primary job. That is the thing I have always wanted to be and went to school for. I am also a professional slam poet.
Right. Whatever that means.
I mean, like, what it means for me is that I train a lot of the college teams, or help train, do workshops for a lot of the college teams that go to Cubsy, and I perform a lot at various colleges throughout the year.
Okay, let's start there because that's kind of how we met. Do you remember anything about? I vaguely remember the poem that made me kind of want to be friends with you.
We met at a Cubsy? No, we didn't.
No. We met at Bowery.
Nationals.
We met at Bowery.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is way before like.
Yeah,
any...
we didn't meet at Cubsy.
No, we didn't. I think it was definitely at a Bowery Poetry Slam. What I remember, if not the first time we met, definitely when I was just like, okay, we need to be friends. It was the comic book.
Oh, the comic book love poem?
Yeah.
That's just a sad little mini anecdote in that, like, that poem is clearly about me. And when I wrote it, I thought it was about somebody else. Like, that makes me sound schizophrenic and crazy. No, what I mean by that is I was writing a poem about one of my friends and about how they needed to be more honest with themselves and more okay with who they were. And then like a year and a half later, I was like, oh, shit. Yep, that was about me too. I had those exact problems that I didn't see a year and a half ago.
Is it bad that like immediately when you said that I was like, no, you don't sound schizophrenic. That makes complete and utter sense to me.
Yep, thought it was about somebody else. It was about me.
And it was about me. Yeah, here we are. So let's start with poetry. When did like poetry and like performing start for you? And then we'll get into the how you never write anything down.
Sure. My introduction to poetry was in high school and was because of a girl. There was somebody I had a crush on, and I asked her out, and she said, sure, but only if you come with me to this poetry slam. And she was horribly catty and mean to everybody who was on stage. And I never intentionally interacted with her again and never stopped doing poetry. I went to poems being like, this is dumb, but I'll go if that's the only way you'll go on a date with me. And then by the end of the night, I'm like, you're dumb, but I like poems. She was like really mean to people, and I was like, they're doing some real stuff up there, and I want to be a part of it, and I don't like you, you're mean.
So that's where that started, with a kind of reversal of...
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's how a lot of people start.
Yeah.
And then I slammed about my hometown, Roanoke, Virginia, and then I slammed a little bit in college, did Cupsy 3 of my 4 years in college. Cupsy being the College Union Poetry Slam Invitational, the big college championship. And then I loved poetry, like I really did. I also did, my 2 fun activities in college were improv and poetry, and leaving college, my thought was like, oh, poetry is fun, but improv is something I'll do forever. And then I got to New York and was lonely and sad. And I was doing that thing that a lot of people who move to New York do, where I went to work and I came home, and I went to work and I came home, and I didn't do anything else, and it was awful, because meeting people in the city is awful.
Yeah. You have to find something.
And so I just Googled Poetry Slam New York City and went to the places that showed up. And that was in 2008, and now we're here.
How did you... What prompted the move to New York from Virginia?
Work. Sound design stuff. In the U.S., if you want to be an independent contractor in my business and not move around a lot, which I decided I didn't want to do. I did that for a little while and then decided I was over it. There are 3 places you can live, and that's Chicago, L.A., New York.
Chicago, really? Why?
Chicago's got a huge theater scene.
Well, that I knew. Oh, okay. That makes sense then. Like, now you saying that makes sense.
It's a huge, yeah, it got a huge theater scene. A little bit, actually, were I going through the same decision now instead of 2007, right? I would also include Houston
Okay.
on
Yeah.
the list because
Yeah.
of their really growing theater scene. But I visited LA, Chicago, and New York and decided which one I liked better and moved there.
How did you, like, way back when go to sound design? Like, how did it? I mean, you said that was also a thing from a very early age. How that's kind of a weird thing to be like, that's exactly what I want to do from a very early. Was it post football?
Yeah, it was. I mean, like, everything was post football. I mean, like, I enjoyed sound and music and making other people sound good before that, but before I thought I was going to play football, right? So, like, everything else was post football.
Right.
But my idea was, I don't know how I got into sound design, actually. I don't.
Was there like bands in high school and you just kind of?
Look, I'm obsessed with sound. I'm obsessed with music. I'm obsessed with sound. I think we understand very comparatively little about how our brains interpret sound compared to what we probably should. And I think there have been lots of studies that show that if a sound is on that conveys a certain emotion, even if it is on at too low a volume for us to consciously realize that it is on, it will affect our mood. And that's insane. And that's cool. And yeah, I mean, like that's, I've also always dug the arts. In high school, I did theater. And I think a lot of my stories started because there was a girl.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of your stories in general,
Here we are. I was doing theater in high school, and my girlfriend at the time didn't get cast in the play, and I did. But she was like, "I'm gonna do lighting, so I'm still involved. You should do sound." And I was like, "Okay." And I quit the play and did sound. And then I was like, "Hey, this is really cool. I want to do this thing."
Right. Which is, by the way, why I was going to ask you if you wanted to plug in headphones, but I'm just afraid that everything I'm doing right now, you're going to judge me in general, but I'm just like, let me not have him plug in headphones because I feel like everything, you're going to listen to this later and you're going to be like, I want to fix it.
You know, I mean, like, this is a podcast. This is, like, one of the things that I think is really important to enjoying yourself at anything is to try and take out the professional of the way you treat things sometimes. Like, I consider myself a professional poet and a professional audio person. In order to enjoy either to their fullest extent, I have to accept that I'm going to listen to a lot of things that sound terrible. And there's going to be a lot of poetry that, while very enjoyable, is not particularly well constructed.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, I just so we're clear, I have never operated on the pretense that this podcast was in any way professional.
Well, and that's like, I didn't say that as an insult. Like,
No. I didn't take it as such. Trust me. I'm very, very aware of what this is.
You know, and like, I am about to start a Magic the Gathering podcast with one of my buddies, and we're not worried about it being professional audio quality either. I mean, me being me and being obsessive, I'm probably going to do a lot more than I need to make sure it sounds good. But at the same time, like, that's not what that is, right? Like, that is not a sound design. It is not a professional thing. It's going to be two dudes talking about a children's card game. We're going to be all right.
And I'm assuming, because we have to discuss Magic, that also started in high school. I'm assuming. I could be wrong.
That started way earlier than high school.
When did Magic start for you? So Magic has been like almost like a lifetime thing for you.
I've been playing Magic. Magic has been out for 22 years. No, a little bit longer. 23 years now. and I've been playing it on and off for that whole time.
Right. Okay. What?
I got introduced to Magic by my cousin, who went to a gaming convention where they were selling this cool new game, Gen Con, and he brought back a couple boxes and was like, "This thing is neat. You should play it." And I was like 6, and I was like, "Okay, I'll do whatever you say, cousin." And I was like, "This game is in fact neat." And I played on and off. Like, I didn't play at all during high school. I don't think I played it. I think I played in the elementary and middle school, and then a little bit in college. And then when I moved to New York, another poet was like, "Hey, you should come with me to a Magic pre-release." And I was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "This game is awesome. I'd forgotten how amazing this game is."
And now there's a good portion of the room that we are in that is taken up with Magic cards.
I would say a very small portion.
I
now,
mean,
there is a good portion of my room that is taken up with Magic cards. That is a thing I will give you. My collection is a little bit absurd at this point.
So yeah, I don't know how necessarily to get it, but you have a tendency to, like, when you were just once describing to me that when you get into something, once you're into it, you tend to.
I'm obsessive about everything. It's a thing I know about myself. Like, it's just, I am extreme. Like, I both am hyper focused and have ADD, which is a really interesting combination. But like, I don't do things halfway. Like, that's not.
Right, yeah,
That's not what we do here. There's a reason I've never tried hard drugs, Jamie. Because I know I have an addictive personality and do not need to go down that path.
Right. So, Virginia.
Yeah.
You have told many stories. What was that like? I mean, I don't know how much you are actually comfortable talking about. I know a lot of this has been in your poems, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'll keep it real general for now, which is Virginia is a beautiful state, and Roanoke is a beautiful town, and I'm really glad. Is swearing a thing that you do on this?
Yeah,
podcast?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm really glad I grew up there, and I don't think I would be me if I hadn't. But at the same time, I am extremely thankful that I got the fuck out.
Right. But you still have family there.
I do still have family there, and I still go back, and, like, if I could take... I think I would like to raise my family one day. I would like to have kids, and I think I'd like to raise them in a small town like the one I grew up in. I would like it to not be a racist hellhole like the town I grew up in.
Right.
But, like, you know...
the nice version of
right.
what that's supposed to be.
Right. And, like, yeah, I mean... Yeah, I mean, Virginia is currently funding... Not the state, but there is somebody who is currently building, and not many people seem upset about it, the Virginia Museum of the War of Northern Aggression.
Yeah.
Also known as a Civil War museum.
Yes.
And that's just so beyond fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, but there are a lot of things that are really great about how I grew up. We grew up with the Appalachian Trail going through our backyard. We grew up backpacking every weekend as kids. I grew up in a place, I think the first time I went backpacking without my parents, like, just it was me and another kid my age went away for a weekend. I think we were 8.
Right.
Which is a thing you could not send in New York City 2 8-year-olds away for the weekend. You would never see them again.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that part of my upbringing is, like, really amazing. And then, you know...
You have siblings. I don't know. A lot of this has come, like, because we've been friends for so long that I don't remember what you've told me and what you haven't.
Yeah.
Ow. Thank you for jumping on me, Smudge.
I have one sister We are both adopted. If you count step siblings, the number goes up dramatically.
Right.
Yeah, I just have my sister, but both my parents got remarried, and so there are, if you count step siblings, I guess I have 5 step siblings.
Okay.
But I never really lived with them, so I got one sister.
Right. And then a lot of cousins or nephews or...
Well, I got many, many nieces and nephews because of both families that we're married into.
Right.
Were very, very large.
Okay.
Like the family that my dad remarried into, who I feel super close with, my step siblings' kids, my nieces and nephews, like step nieces, whatever. That's relevant. They're my nieces and nephews. There are 19 of them now.
Okay. I'm only asking because I come from a very...
18.
There you go.
The 19th's still on the way. Hasn't been born yet.
I come from kind of the opposite thing. I mean, we do have a larger family, but my dad was adopted, and then his mom tried to come back into his life as a teenager, and he wasn't really having that. So we don't really know, and there's a lot of really fuzzy, kind of messed up stuff that is both rumor, some of it fact, some of it we'll never know for sure. But my dad's side of family and my mom's side of family is a couple of people who are non-religious, and then the rest are Orthodox Jews. So
I got a bit of that same game going on.
Right.
But like my thing is like I was adopted. So was my sister, and I don't know. I honestly haven't had this conversation with my sister, and probably should. But I have no interest in my birth parents.
Okay.
Like your DNA donors.
Yeah. My dad had a similar feeling about his mom, who decided that she wanted to be part of his life when he had already lived like his first 15 years with a foster family. He's like, no, that's my family. And then he was just like, then he lived with her for like until he turned 18 and then immediately joined the army.
Yeah, if my birth family showed up, I'd be like, who the fuck are y'all people? Get out.
Yeah.
Where were you when shit was rough?
Yeah.
I don't give a... No, that's real.
So where, as far as like poems, because I'm sure people have asked about this numerous times in conversation, and then I'm sure you've probably done a couple of interviews, maybe with poetry-related stuff, about writing everything in your head, not really writing anything down unless you are forced to. Is that just poetry, or does that apply to everything in your life?
I mean, I think better when I'm moving. That applies to as much about my life as I can as possible. I've got some recent poetry projects where that's actually not true, where I'm working really heavily in form, and I can't make my brain do that.
Right.
And I think that's actually been really good for my writing, forcing myself to write some stuff down. But I am much happier writing in my head. The story in my poem about Sarah is absolutely true. I, at this point, have put pen to paper and write some things down, but I didn't for literally 10 years after that event.
Right.
And now, like...
And that's what prompted that? Or...
I did both before that.
Okay.
I did write in my head already a little before that.
Right.
But I was like... Me and letters didn't really get along for a while.
Right. So that was a very conscious decision on your part, or...
I mean, like, yes and no. Like, it's the thing I was already doing. But, like,
right.
The stopping writing things down was very conscious.
Right.
The writing things in my head was just that's the way my weird brain works.
Yeah. How does that even, like, work?
I don't understand how people write poems on paper. Like, I don't know how to... I can't tell you how that works because that's the only way it works.
For you. Yeah.
Like, that's...
Like, but do you forget stuff? Or, like, no. How does that...
My memory is very good. I've got what's called a partial eidetic memory, which means if I am focused on something, I will remember it.
Okay.
If I'm not focused on it, like if I half hear something, that's the difference between a full recall memory or a photographic memory.
Right.
Like if I glance at a comic or a newspaper, I won't remember it.
Right.
But if I sit down and say to myself, this is a thing I need to remember, it's just there.
That's amazing because I have to. I mean, I not only have to focus. I mean, this is partially because of, like, as you well know, I had this before then, but it was definitely made worse by the head injury I had in 2005. Is that, like, I not only have to focus on it, I have to have it repeated to me. It has to be like reinforced numerous times.
On a couple of different poetry teams I was on, instead of our coach keeping people's poems in front of, and when they messed up, telling them, the coach would just look at me and say, stop them when they mess up. Because if I hear someone do a poem 3 times, I'll have it memorized.
Huh.
Period. Like, it's just there. And so, like, when I'm writing in my head, I will start the poem and I will say it out loud and I will mutter to myself, and I'll usually be walking while I do this.
I've seen you do this.
And then as soon as it's not right, I'll start over from the beginning. And I'll go, like, if I make it a line and a half that I really like, and then the second half of the second line, I don't like the way it sounds, I start over and I say the first line and a half that works, and I try a new second half. If that works, I keep moving. If that doesn't work, I start over, and I start over, and I start over until eventually I have a whole poem.
I didn't know you start over. And do you ever record yourself, or does it just not? Is it just habituated that you do it this way, so that, like, it's?
Yeah, it's just in my brain. I mean, I occasionally record myself for use, like, I don't record myself so that I remember it, but I occasionally record it. So it's like when I was on a team, I wrote these 5 poems this week, and I want to know which one my coach wants me to work on. I'll just record it and email it real fast. So instead of wasting the time typing it up, and they can tell me which one they want me to pursue. And then I'll type that up, and we can go through edits.
And then you type it. I was curious how that works when you're on a team, because it works fine. It works beautifully when you're by yourself. But
well, I mean, like, I've gotten a lot of poems published in anthologies and in lit mags and stuff and literary journals, and all of that obviously has to be typed up. So, like, that is a thing that I am willing to do. It's just that is not.
But you never submitted stuff in order to get in. It was all. Because I would imagine the person would have already have to kind of know the poem, or was that just Kristen back in the day going, write this down and send it to someone?
I mean, it wasn't Kristen, it was Jean Ann.
Okay.
It was Jean Ann who, like, really, really pushed me to get stuff submitted.
Right.
And I owe Jean Ann a huge thanks for that. But yeah, I mean, before that first team, I didn't want to write things down ever.
Right.
And Jean Ann was like, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to write it down, if for no other reason, so that I can edit it.
Yeah. Because
I can't edit on the fly like you can.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Is that like because I find this interesting. We've had this conversation about, like, sort of social anxiety type stuff. Is like you have these habits that you get really used to, and I'm not talking about you specifically. I mean, you and me both have these things, and then we have to go be and interact with other people, and we suddenly have to be like, oh wait, other people don't work this way.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was. I mean, like. It was really hard for me to understand. It was hard for me to understand why other people thought there was a big difference between writing things down and writing it in your head.
Right.
Like, I understood that you did it your way and I did it my way. But in my mind, that's the difference between, like, you write in cursive and I write in script.
Right.
Not that these are 2 totally different skills, which a lot of people seem to think they are. I mean, Ken Arkine told me that I wasn't a writer because I didn't physically write it down. And I'm like, relax, dude. I'm doing the same writing you are.
Yeah.
The medium in which I commit it down does not determine. Writing it in my head and then putting it on paper later does not make me any less of a writer than someone who scribbles it. Like, relax.
Well, but I think that comes back to you being obsessed with sound, is that you write in sound.
Yeah, I do.
And the majority of other people, when they write poems, don't write in sound. When you have to edit something that's written in sound, it's like, oh, you either have to, I need to look at it.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And like, everything comes down to sound for me. Like, I think it's, yeah, whether it be music or background or poetry, I am obsessed, like, obsession is the right word, with the way things sound. I always have music playing, or I'm talking to someone, or...
Right.
The only time I'm ever in, air quote, silence is when I'm in the woods, and anyone who thinks that that is silent has never been in the woods.
Woods, yeah, exactly.
And that is intentional, because I find those things relaxing, and I find those things enjoyable, and, like, I find that my brain works better when I make it do multiple things at once. Like, it is not uncommon for me to be playing a song, writing a poem, and watching something on Netflix all at the same time. Like, this is fairly common.
Yes. As someone who lives with you, that is a very common occurrence.
Just because it helps to have my brain doing multiple things and be listening to like, it helps me break it down while I'm hearing multiple things at once.
Can you articulate? Because I asked you about this a couple nights ago, but it's like, for someone, and I don't know if you could, because you're kind of doing it now, but how could you articulate? Because for anyone who doesn't do that, it seems like that should be impossible. And I know it's not impossible, because I've seen you do it. You're not the only person. In fact, a lot of the people I know who are audio or sound obsessed in a certain sense, like, have similar things. I know visual people who have also have a similar thing. I'm curious as to how, if you could explain that to maybe.
I can't. I mean, I feel like I just tried.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that what you did wasn't adequate. I'm just like.
It's just a matter of, like, learning to listen. Right? In our apartment right now, sound is never just one thing. In our apartment right now, there's the sound of the mic cable moving as you move your arms. There is the cat rolling on the floor. There is the other cat playing with the cat toy. There is the fly that is buzzing around. There is the sound of our fluorescent lights. These are all things that we hear, right? And by and large, they are things that we ignore and are things that we should ignore. But I find that when I need to think really hard about something, hyper-focusing and trying to pull out as many of these individual sounds as I can helps me focus. And in the spy museum in high school, there is a plaque about a spy who claimed that they could listen to and understand 7 complete conversations that were all happening at once.
Right.
And the high school me was like, that doesn't seem real. So I started training myself to see if I could do it. And I can listen to and understand completely, I would say, 5 different audio inputs or conversations before I start to lose them. And it's a matter of training yourself to listen to everything at once and sort of break it down later. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of, it's interesting that, like, you started that at a very early age, and then that's basically, I think, what keeps it. I think, here's the way I'll, to clarify it, not that you're explaining, but, like, the fact that you now do that essentially for a living, I think, is what makes it might seem impossible to someone who doesn't do that basically every day of their life.
Right. I mean, like, there are so many things that we do, big or little, that become second nature to us because we do them all of the time.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't know how tight to pull a suture to know that it is closed without being so tight it will be uncomfortable. But
Right.
that is a thing that a doctor or a vet who does that 50 times a day knows for surezies. Right? Like, I play with sound. I know sound stuff. That's what I know.
Yeah.
I know how to build things and I know sound, and that's about it.
So, just because I want to run down some of, like, the cooler... Who are some of the... Because every once in a while, like, what are the stories that I've theorized that between the two of us, we might know everyone. Just collect... You more of everyone than me. So I kind of want to, just because as a sound person and as a person who's been involved with a lot of live shows, and we will get to the nerdy things. There are many nerdy things that I want to discuss with you.
Yeah,
In
I'm
fact,
ready.
if I get too tired, we might need to stop and be like, "Hey, we're gonna need to do this a second time just to cover all the nerdy shit." But I love Asgodisk is generally speaking best show, weirdest show, worst show, and if they are all the same show, that is also okay.
That I've worked, that I've seen.
Let's
music.
start with worked.
I mean, are we talking music? Are we talking theater? Like, I don't know. I have answers for these, but these are all different questions. Like,
Let's start with theater.
I mean, that's fucking hard. I've worked some really weird shows.
It could just be whatever pops into your head. It doesn't. You don't have to go list. You know.
Yeah. What's a good one? Did a show. I'm trying to decide what story I want to tell. Got some fun ones. I've got some silly ones. I did a show where everyone in the audience had a tablet. And there was basically a house on stage, and there were a couple different cameras hidden throughout the set so that the actors didn't have to worry about ever cheating out or facing the audience. They could have their back completely to the audience. And you as the audience could choose, you as each individual audience member could choose whether or not you wanted to watch the action that was happening on stage, or if you wanted to watch one of the video feeds. And one of the things that was cool about that project / absolutely nuts is the director wanted me to mic every single surface. Which anybody who knows anything about audio and feedback is an almost impossible task. But the whole idea of the show was the characters didn't know if they were in reality or not. And so it was supposed to be so real it was almost unreal again.
Okay.
So, like, the set, all of the patterns would be like normal patterns you might see in a house, but would be painted brighter colors. Okay. Instead of it would be a brighter red, and it would be a brighter, and he specifically wanted everything to almost be feedbacky without being feedback. But because of that, there were 94 different live microphones, and and when you had a tablet, these were all were live uploading to a server, and you could, on your tablet, you also had little headphones that you could be listening to if you want, and you could play any one of the 94 feeds, 92 bunch of feeds. You could listen to any one of them, or listen to what I thought you should be listening to. I think that's the craziest show I've ever done.
Did that make you want to, like, just bludgeon the director beforehand,
it's one of the most-
during, and after?
It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. It was also awesome.
Okay.
But yes.
So music.
So most of my concert stuff was in college. I worked for the Roadhouse at my college. Green Day puts on a great show, or at least they did in 2008.
Right.
I worked a couple of Flogging Molly shows up in D.C. They're one of my favorite shows to both go to and listen to. They put on an amazing show.
Yeah, I have not seen them in years, and every time they come through, I'm just like, I want to go see them, and then I just don't.
They were fun to work for, and I think they're the only band I have both been an audience member for and an employee for, like,
right.
where I both worked the show and gone to see them of my own choice on other occasions, and they were awesome.
It's also one of my favorite things about a Flogging Molly concert is one of the few concerts that a mosh pit can slowly morph into everyone linked in arms and doing a little like jig, linked in arms, and then 2 minutes later decide to start hitting each other again. Like,
It's just good, solid fun. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's just like, and the funny thing is, unlike at some shows that I've been to where like there's a mosh pit and people are hitting each other, there seems to be everyone is glad about whatever the hell it is they're doing at that moment. It's like if you're getting punched in the face, it's like, I'm sorry I punched you in the face. It's like, it's okay. I'm okay that you punched me in the face. All right, you want to do a jig? Let's do a jig. Okay, let's punch each other in the face again. It seems very Irish. I don't know. Even if the people aren't Irish, it's...
That's what a fast beat does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are. I think those are some of my really good stories. I'm trying to think of any other fun ones that are short. I don't even know if he's still alive, but in 2008, Mickey Rooney was approximately 1 billion years old.
Yeah. He's still alive, barely, I think.
And he was touring with a couple of were once Broadway stars, were once famous movie stars, who are now super old. And I was working the show at the Roadhouse at my college where they came in. And so I was stage managing that particular show, and we went, and it was like 4 minutes to his thing, and so I went downstairs. I guess it was like 6 minutes. It was whenever I was told how much time he needed to get up the stairs, right?
Right.
And so I went and got him, and he came up to the stairs, and we're waiting, and he's about to go on, and he's like, I'll be right back. I have to go downstairs and pee. And I'm like, dude, we don't have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, he had a hard time walking. He's like, we don't have 10 minutes for you to walk downstairs and pee and come back. And he said, okay. And then walked 5 feet behind us, opened to the back door of the theater, and just started peeing out the back door of the theater. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, but he's ready to go on stage, so I guess my job is done.
Right.
I was like, it's like, well, you're a very famous person who is peeing on my steps.
Yep.
I don't know what to do about that.
And you've also done Glimmerglass, right?
Yeah, they were my first professional gig. I worked for them as an intern, everything up to head audio engineer. I worked for Glimmerglass Opera for 5 years? 6 seasons? 5 seasons?
And are you actually like the guy on the boards? How does that... I mean, I know you've kind of transitioned from like audio tech to sound design.
Yeah, there I was definitely the dude on the board.
Okay.
So the way that department was 5 people. It was the designer / head of the department. It was also the titles / projector department. But like there was the head of our department, There were 2 interns. There was an engineer and a head engineer. And, you know, he did all the design and told us what to do, but, you know, it was the head engineer's job to make sure, or the engineer on nights when the head engineer had off, to make sure that things ran smoothly. And that involves, just like most things that have music, there was a board position on stage, like off stage, but physically on the stage, down left, and then there was a position in the booth. Yeah, that was my first ever professional gig. I started as an intern and then worked my way up.
So I don't even know where to, like, there's so, like I said, there's so much stuff that, like, so I want to go with
Glimmerglass is awesome, PS, for anybody who's listening to this and likes opera.
Right.
I didn't know that I liked opera until I worked for Glimmerglass.
I found that a lot about a lot of music that's like, oh, it's just about you find whatever is. It's like, here's what you think that genre is, and then here's the thing that is awesome.
Well, I just never really heard opera.
Right.
And then I spent my whole summer listening to opera.
And Glimmerglass is actually it's different, though, than, like, say, when people are classically, I mean, I could be completely wrong here. When people are thinking of opera, they're probably...
Glimmerglass does a lot of classic opera. It does a lot of... Glimmerglass is also one of the few opera companies in the U.S. that still regularly does new work.
Right.
But they also do... regular meaning every couple years.
Right.
But they also do, for sure, a lot of classic stuff. That place was great.
So I'm trying to think of, like, poetry stuff.
Yeah, you're the dude with the questions.
Yeah, I know. It's just, well, let's jump around a little bit, because I just want to. So your schedule for a while and still is kind of crazy with this kind of stuff. How does that work into downtime, or, like, how do you find time to play stuff like Magic? Or,
I mean, for a long time I didn't.
Right.
And that is part of why I was unhappy.
Right.
I feel like I only really got back into competitive Magic and stuff and doing more things for myself and, you know, having a significant other who I care about in, like, the last 2 years. And it's because I stopped doing a lot of my other extracurriculars. I'm not running any poetry shows at the moment.
Right.
I had to take a step back. I mean, like, this time 4 years ago, I owned a small business, was running a poetry show, was helping to run another poetry show,
right.
was on a slam team, was running a Cupsy team, was volunteering for a pet adoption group, and had no social life and no time and was a stressful mess.
And probably not sleep. You have the most bizarre, by the way, you have the most bizarre sleep habits I've ever.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think in addition to being obsessive, I think it's part of being obsessive. I'm a workaholic.
Right.
But part of being happy, I mean, I've said this to a number of people recently. I think I'm really, really proud of and happy with the life I led for the last 5 years.
Right.
I also know that if I were to lead it for the next 5 years, I would be a miserable, miserable sack of human. It is time for me to slow down a little bit. It is time for me to do a little more for me. It is time for me to not feel bad about saying no to people. Like, it's time to work that shit out.
So just to go back to Magic, just briefly, if you can, explain what you love so much about Magic.
I mean, first off, I'm going to make an utterly unqualified statement that I will defend only if you ask me to, and I will explain no more. Magic is, simply put, the best game ever made.
Yeah, you're gonna have to defend that. I'm not defending as in I'm attacking that, but you're gonna have to explain that.
Yeah, Magic is the only game that is one game that is also many different games to other people. There are about 12 different ways to play competitive Magic, much less casual Magic. So it's not one game, it's 20 games, and different people have things they love. And it's not even just the game of playing it, it's also deck building, it's also the story, it's also thinking. I mean, what is so amazing to me about Magic and why I think... Let me take one step back. It's chess where you pick your own pieces.
Okay.
It is chess, in an actual game of chess, there's a very limited number of actual different pieces, right? Pawn, queen, king, rook, knight, bishop. And yet chess is as complex a game as it is.
Right.
Magic has, at this point, over 16,000 pieces, and you get to pick which ones you use, which is awesome.
Okay. That's actually a very succinct way of putting it.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And the thing I love most about it is you can teach somebody to play, and they'll be able to play a game in half an hour. You can teach somebody in half an hour to play, and they'll be able to get through a game. And they'll have a good time. But to actually understand all of the rules and be competitive and to have that level of mastery is a thing that takes years, if not decades, which is awesome. To have something that can be equally entertaining for people who have never played it before and people who have been playing it since they were 7.
Right.
I say as I point at myself, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know any other game for that is true of.
I'm sure there are people who could probably argue I am not that person.
Yeah, I mean, not that there aren't other great games, and not that there aren't problems with Magic. There certainly are. There are things I really don't like about the game, but man, it's awesome. And most of the people who play it are very, very smart. One of my favorite things about it is I've met a lot of awesome people playing Magic, and most of them are highly successful, highly intelligent people in their late 20s, early 30s.
Right.
There are the stereotypical, what we think of Magic players. Those are a thing.
Yeah. And also the stereotypical, like,
nerd,
just competitive gamer in any.
Yeah. Like,
but I
those
find
bad
like
stereotypes are real,
and I feel like those guys tend to be sort of the same in every
right. And some of them are jerks,
community.
and they exist, but like that's not most of the people,
right?
And there are some people who are now very good friends of mine that I met at Magic tournaments, right? That I met because we had a shared love of a thing, and we started joking about it and realized, oh shit, we have similar senses of humor. Oh shit, we're both smart people. Oh shit, we should be friends, right? Like,
I've known you for what, like 7 years?
We met in 2008 when I moved to the city.
So it would be 8 years. And I've lived here for a year, and this is you are now, I think, going to be episode 99 of this podcast.
That's right.
It's
just in time for me to get in for the sweet episode 100.
Yeah.
Plug your party.
Yeah. Which is going to be also in the intro of this, because I'm doing the intro of everybody. But it's going to be at 739 Franklin Avenue at 7 p.m. It's a $5 suggested donation and a 1-drink minimum. And I think we
help a dude out.
Yeah. It's going to be a really fun time. There's basically a good chunk of the people who have ever been on this podcast are going to be performing and or just hanging out. And there's a bucket of crap that's going to have I say crap, but it's actually like cool nerdy stuff and a stack of vinyl that you can go through.
That is not the way to advertise your event.
No, it is not.
Why don't you try that again? There's going to be a bucket of
really good nerdy stuff.
That's better. Take 2. Okay.
But just because like we're almost at an hour, and I know I have more stuff, but like I'm I think the cats want to be fed.
They do, but they'll be fine. They're not going to starve to death. I swear we feed them regularly. They're okay.
yeah. But Smudge definitely seems to want to be involved with our podcast. But so rapid fire, just because there's some things that I'm curious. What are you listening to nowadays, like music-wise, and do you have like a favorite that you think?
I'm listening to a little bit of everything. Honestly, the thing that I am currently listening to on repeat and obsessed with is the musical Hamilton. It's so good. It's so good. I've also been listening. The two things that I think are currently most played on my phone are Hamilton and Aesop Rock. I think are pretty much what I've been listening to for the last 3 weeks.
What is a theater thing that you think people should be into that?
If you're in New York, two best shows I've seen in years here are Hamilton and Sleep No More. Sleep No More is insane.
Sleep No More is the one you could probably actually get into.
You can get into both. You'll be able to get into Sleep No More far more easily. Like, you'll be able to get into Sleep No More on short notice.
Right.
But if you know you're visiting New York or you live here, you can buy a ticket for Hamilton for a couple months out.
Right.
No problem. But if you're like, I want to go see a show next week.
Yeah.
Go see Sleep No More. It's amazing. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
So, and now just favorite comic book character. I actually don't do
What do you mean by favorite? Like, we need to set a term. We need to have a definition.
Well, okay. I know you're really into the X-Men.
Like,
so
like there's the character I think is coolest. There are characters I think are most written. There are characters I find most interesting. Like, what are we defining as favorite here? Character I most want to see turn into a movie. Like, there are lots of.
Okay. Let's go with. I wouldn't go best written. Here's the reason why. Because unless it's a series that has all been written by one creator at one time. I mean, there probably is. I don't know. Let's go with that. Let's go with best written.
I honestly think the Invincible comic is amazing.
Right.
It's my favorite comic book series. I think he's my favorite written character. I think he's got everything that makes Superman interesting with none of the things that make Superman boring.
Right.
Sweet.
He's kind of like a weird mix of like Superman with some Peter Parker kind of thrown in there.
Well, yeah, it's Superman who has to make moral decisions because he's not a god.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So, favorite character as in... I'm not going to say movie, because that's just... and I do briefly want to ask about X-Men Apocalypse. But
also, were you talking about background, power set? Right, like there's... I've got like 14 long boxes in my room, dude. You're going to have to be more specific.
Let's see. So, favorite X-Men?
Psylocke.
Favorite... Ooh, let's see. Favorite power set? Yeah, let's do that. Favorite power set?
I don't have an immediate answer. Like, let me think about that for a second. There's no clear... Yeah, on that one.
Right.
But, I got to go with Rogue.
Okay.
And the reason not only are her powers super cool, but they are a significant part of who she is as a character. They carry with it significant downside.
I was going to say, even with the downside.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what makes it interesting.
Okay.
Like, characters who are just, like... I know there are a lot of people who find Superman really interesting, and I've had 2-hour-long conversation about this, but I find Superman to be an extremely dull character.
From a power set or just in general?
From everything.
I mean, yeah.
Well,
I think a lot of that has to... I don't think he's ever truly been... And I have my own ideas about how you could maybe fix this. And one of the ways you could fix this is not have him be Superman, and that's what makes Invisible work. Is that he has never been, like a lot of those characters who've been around forever, really been written correctly.
Well, I don't know about that. I also haven't read all that much Superman. I've read
Right.
a lot of the big runs, but the thing, I mean, yeah, this is gonna be right up there on controversial statements with Magic is the best game ever, which is I'm not even sure that Superman counts as a hero, because I don't think you can be a hero without risk.
Yeah, and I always see,
and certainly not an interesting one.
my thing with Superman is I think the one thing that they don't have him do enough, and this is just heroes in general, but it's particularly with Superman with like his sort of godlike like power set, is he doesn't fail enough. And I mean, like, utterly fail. Like, he's never really had to. And there's also, like, the thing of, like, okay, you got to create all these things that are actually a threat to him because of his power set, unless they have kryptonite, which is whatever. But my big thing with him is, like, I would love to see just Superman massively fail and then have him as a character deal with the fact that here's a thing that he can't solve. Ever. I know they've tried to kind of make Lex that, but I don't know if they've ever really.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, they need to be complete characters with flaws. And,
yeah.
And that's what makes it interesting. And what makes it interesting is, like, finding out what is human about these less than human or more than human characters. Like, I think that's what's interesting, and I think that in a well-written comic, there's a lot of poetry, and I think a lot of that is in the struggle. And a character who doesn't struggle just isn't interesting.
Do you subscribe to the argument, and I think I know what your answer to this, that inherently the DC characters, heroes, don't have that as much as the Marvel?
Very few of the DC characters do.
But it's also the central ethos, in my mind, of Marvel characters in general.
Well, it's why Marvel, by and large, to me, tells more interesting stories.
Yeah.
I will say this, just so that it doesn't sound like I'm just crabbing on DC all day. I think, by and large, the DC Rogues Gallery is better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Their villains are actually significantly better.
Well, when your characters aren't interesting, you got to make somebody interesting,
yeah.
right? I mean, like, so, like, one of my favorite Invincible moments is, and this is at Marvel, but
it's okay. That's essentially,
one of my favorite Invincible moments, and this is giving away something. There are these alien creatures that, if they are not attached to another living being, are harmless, and if they are attached to another living being, are almost unstoppable death machines.
The Segwids, or whatever.
Yeah, the Segwids.
Yeah.
And there's a moment where a lot of the superheroes, for reasons I don't want to give away, because this is already minor spoilers, but I'm trying to keep it as minor as possible.
Yeah.
By
the way, this is a horrible spoilers podcast, so don't feel bad about
it. A lot of heroes aren't available, and so the heroes jump into this area where the Segwids have landed and are evacuating all of the people, and then Invincible is faced with a moment where he's like, it's just me and these last two kids, and I don't know if I can get them out.
Right.
And if I don't get them out and they become infected, the whole world might die. Or I can try and get these kids out. Or I could definitely kill these kids.
Yeah.
Before the Segwids get to them, and then everyone else would be safe. Am I willing to kill these two children to save the world? And, like, that's a dope moment.
Yeah.
And is a thing that, like, this super powerful, I think he's 17 years old at the time, 17-year-old kid has to solve.
Yeah.
And has to live with the consequences. And I don't want to tell you what he chooses, because you need to go read the comics, because they're awesome.
Yeah, you definitely should.
But, like, that moment is one of the reasons I love that character. And, like, there are many other moments like it, but you don't have that choice in Superman.
Yeah. I would love to see a Supermen have to make that choice on a more regular basis.
Right, like-
choices like that.
And like Rogue, every time she uses her power, she risks going insane and losing her memory and her life.
Yeah.
But she chooses to do it to save the people she loves.
And one
Awesome.
of the people who she rather almost permanently stole the powers of, actually, Rogue didn't go insane. The person she stole the powers from went insane and kind of...
Well, Rogue went insane also for a little while.
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
person went more permanently insane.
Permanently insane, yeah.
And like, there are a lot of situations that could be solved by Rogue's powers where she intentionally does not use them because it comes at too high a cost. Awesome story.
Yeah. So, two things. Number one, this is a question that I generally have asked people who I don't know very well, but I'm curious as to what your answer would be.
Peanuts.
Okay. Well, the question was do you have a thing that you get really excited about and are really obsessed about, but when you start to talk about it with people who aren't familiar with it, they just when you talk about it in general, people's eyes just glaze over, and it's okay if that answer is magic.
We've already talked about poetry, magic, opera, musical theater, comic books. I'm pretty sure my life is just one big answer to that question. Like, this whole podcast, I don't know how many people download this or listen to this, but if any of them are still awake after listening to me go on about this shit that nobody else cares about, I'll be amazed.
There's definitely, I mean, we appeal to a niche, is what I will say. And because you are currently the only person so far who has been on this podcast who has seen X-Men Apocalypse, because I refused to see it, can we briefly go over that, and then we can stop and we'll do this again at a different
Worst movie ever. I am one of the biggest X-Men fanboys out there.
This is why, yes.
And it was so bad. It's poorly written. It's poorly acted. The direction is abysmal.
I've heard it's poorly acted even from people who are normally great actors, like Fassbender and...
Yes.
And...
I love me some Catnip. Catnip Everdeen is awesome. And yes, I know I am intentionally mispronouncing the character's name, but Catnip she's an amazing actress.
Yeah.
Abysmal.
I've heard that in the film, you just see on screen, it just comes across in waves that she does not want to be there.
So I'm going top 3 terrible things about that movie.
Okay.
And there's no way for this to just not be spoiler season, so sorry about that.
It's okay.
1, this is in no particular order. These are definitely the worst 3 things about the movie, but these are not necessary. I don't know how to put them in order. They're just bad. 1 character says to another, "Your brother always knew you would be the one who could make a difference and maybe even change the world." And I'm sitting there like, by definition, making a difference is changing the world. You literally just said your brother knew you would A or A. Like, this made it past the editing room. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself. And 2... Look, I got no problem with the occasional cliche when well executed. Something becomes a cliche because it works.
Yeah.
But there are 7 times in this movie, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times where they show a single tear rolling down a character's cheek. 7 times in one movie?
This is.
Are you fucking kidding me?
This is similar to your argument about the amounts you're allowed to yell the word no.
Yeah.
Like in Man of Steel.
I feel like there's a very good reason for that. Everybody loves Point Break, man. No, bang, bang, bang is great, but you can't do that 5 times. It doesn't work. You get one, no, like you get one Stella moment. That's all you get. You get one Stella, and then you're done.
Number 3.
And like, I can't even move off number 2 yet. The worst part of it is there are 7 different moments with the solo tear, but there's one character that has 4 of them. You're really going to tell me that Magneto has a single tear 4 different times? You can go right the head and fuck off.
That's like, oh wait, no, it's subtle acting. Really? Like 4 times?
Yeah, single tear 4 times. You can go right ahead and fuck off. And number 3, there is at least one scene. I say at least one because there's one where it is obvious, but potentially more scenes where they just didn't finish the CGI. They just, not that it's poorly done, it was included in the movie unfinished. And I hate you. The example, so in one scene, Magneto is using his hyped up powers to basically destroy the world. And he rips off all these containers off a container ship, and the ship tilts sideways. And then after Magneto stops using his powers and after the disaster is over, it shows like clips of all of the places that he has damaged. And it shows the container ships, which are still on their side. The containers have fallen in the water, but no, they didn't sink. They didn't go back to normal. They just stayed sideways. You expect me to? They just stayed perfectly sideways after you? Fuck off. I hated that movie. It was so bad. It even included Psylocke.
I know you were really excited about that.
I was so mad.
Someone argued that it's Olivia Munn playing Olivia Munn.
I mean, look. The 90 seconds they had of Psylocke on the screen were cool.
Right.
She chopped a car in half with her mind. I loved it.
But
it was so bad.
I also heard that like the first, like what makes it worse is that the first 10 or 15 minutes set you up for what you think is going to be a good movie, and then it's just terrible.
I would say like the first 3 minutes, but yeah. I mean like the...
And then it just portrays all of that.
It's so bad.
So I should be glad that I didn't. I mean, I'm probably going to catch it when it's on cable.
The costume that they used for Apocalypse is so terrible looking.
It is, but I wonder how you could have had that and not... Because if you actually... Some of those things, like translation, like comic book to a movie, Apocalypse is one of those characters that's just like... It's like... How if that was on screen, I don't know if that would work either. Like a direct translate. I don't know how you would make that costume work.
You might have to change a little something.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you right now, the answer is not what they did.
Yeah, and also a complete waste of Oscar Isaac. Like,
it was. Yeah, and woof. It was. He had no character. There were glaring plot. It was so bad. It was so bad. There was like one enjoyable... Anybody who saw Days of Future Past, the great Quicksilver moment.
Right.
They realized that was the best moment of that movie. So they had like a 10-minute version of that in this. And the first 4 minutes of that 10-minute version were super cool. And then I was like, are we still doing this slow-mo nonsense?
And apparently Wolverine is in it as Weapon X briefly,
yeah.
For no reason whatsoever.
Well, because they had I don't know.
Shoehorn in Wolverine somehow.
They thought that if they crammed more mutants in, it would be cooler to make up for the fact that their writers didn't understand the English language, knew you could make a difference or maybe even change the world. Like, fuck off. Whoever did that should stop writing forever.
Yeah. Have you watched the first X-Men movie recently? It's really not, it's not very good.
Oh, no, it's not. I love the X-Men, and the only good ones have been First Class and Days of Future Past.
See, I really liked X2.
It was okay.
Yeah. I thought Days of Future Past was okay, and I really like First Class. I don't know. I don't think they've ever gotten them right, quote unquote.
Well, you said to me, I'm extrapolating from something you said to me.
Right.
I'm taking it one step further, which is part of what makes... You said the first part, and I elaborated the second part. what makes the Avengers movies work is how well they work as a team.
Right.
What makes the X-Men movies not work is that they spend the whole movie saying, we're working as a team, and then it's literally just, I'm going to use my mutant power, and then when it doesn't finish the job, you'll use your mutant power, and then when it doesn't finish the job, you'll use your... Look, everybody, like, it's the superhero equivalent of, like, the Kung Fu B-movie extras. Like, they're all going at Bruce Lee one at a time.
Yeah.
Why don't y'all work together? And in this case, Apocalypse is Bruce Lee, right? Like,
I don't think there's ever been in an X-Men film anything like little moments from Avengers, like when Iron Man in Avengers flies past Cap and bounces his repulsor beams off the shield.
no, right? Like, that's all them working together. They've never had any of that. Even the fight scenes where a bunch of people are fighting at the same time,
Yeah.
they're each fighting one enemy themselves, and there's no teamwork, there's no nothing. And the whole time, every time they get beat up, Cyclops says, we need to work as a team, guys, and then they go in and win, even though they're still not working as a team.
Like, one of the great things about Civil War in the airport sequence, aside from all the little moments, is you do have those one-on-one fights, but there's a couple I think literally Cap at one point might actually say this. He goes, switch.
Well, yeah,
or it might not have been Cap, but it was just...
And they all work together. And, like, one of my favorite moments from that movie is the Cap, Bucky versus Iron Man fight at the end.
Yeah.
Where it's all teamwork. Where both of them, neither of them can stand up to Iron Man on their own.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, passing the shield to each other, timing their moves together. Like, one of them bounces the shield off Iron Man's face and the other one catches it. I'm just like, this is so good.
And there's nothing
Dear
like
X-Men,
that in any of the X-Men films.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite little moments in Civil War, I just getting on this, and then we should really wrap up, at least for this time, is just Spider-Man air skiing on the back of War Machine.
Was awesome.
It's just like one of those things. It's like one of those little moments that, like, when you see that, you're on screen, you're going, Spider-Man's like air skiing on the back of War Machine.
Well, and like it's some of those, you know, part of it is the fact that, like, there are moments that actually feel comic booky, and there are also moments that feel poignant. But, like, some of it is just like, that's how human beings interact with each other.
Yeah.
They don't do it the way it is on, like, the last scene of the X-Men is literally in a sequence. All of the X-Men use their powers and fight Apocalypse, and one of them gets a little bit, and the next person gets a little bit further, and then the next person, and it's literally the Kung Fu movie extra nonsense, and I'm like, this is so boring and stupid to watch.
And then apparently Jean uses...
Well, she's the last one.
We've just apparently in the movie universe, we've just decided that, which, by the way, I have to run this by you because you would know this better than I would. Has this happened in the comic books where we've just, the Phoenix is just part of her power set now? Like, or is that's just a movie thing, right?
So it is just a movie thing as far as concerned, but the new X-Men version of Jean Grey, like the one from the past who shows up, had an experience, and she now has powers that the old one didn't.
Okay.
And she's still discovering what she can do. So maybe eventually they decide that I'm just the Phoenix when I want to be. But they haven't revealed that yet.
Yeah.
As of right now, she's just got a little bit of, like, emotion control that she didn't have before.
Yeah.
And, like, some other, right, like... So, yeah, that's just a movie thing.
So, I guess to cap this up, magic, awesome, X-Men Apocalypse, terrible.
Yeah, I feel good about that.
Yeah, I feel good about that, too.
Seriously, one thing I wanted to say in the earlier Magic session, but we moved on.
Right.
You asked me, I never actually answered the question, why do I love this game so much?
Sure.
It is the only thing I have ever found in my life that uses all of my brain, but I have no responsibility towards.
Interesting.
It is fulfillment without responsibility. And that is a thing I have literally found nowhere else in my life. I love audio. There's a lot of responsibility there.
Right.
I love poetry. I have a lot of responsibilities there.
Yeah.
It is the only thing that I've ever found fulfilling without requiring any responsibility, and it's fucking awesome. I love the game, but like when I lose, I'm like, oh man, would have been totally cooler to win. Don't care, and then move on. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's fucking cool. That's all. The end.
Awesome.